secondary PTSD. This is some of what, that's why I wanted to bring the video clip out so you could see Marie and the kids on that clip to see some of what she does. And I don't know if you guys recognized the hyperarousal that she's already starting to move into. At the grocery store, she has to be in front of him and has to keep things moving. So it's like she's holding his hypervigilance and anxiety and trying to, keep it contained as best she can. She wants him to avoid, right? She wanted him to stop watching. She wanted him to delete all of his photos. She wanted him to, she said, how long does it take to get over this? The denial of what she has lost is just so prevalent. She lost her husband. She said he died over there. So just tons of avoidance. She didn't mention any of the re-experiencing the symptoms and flashbacks, but that for sure can, in a longer term relationship, that starts to show up. I'm trying to think of examples.
He talked about his dreams.
What's that?
He mentioned bad dreams.
Yeah, I was thinking from her re-experiencing of his trauma. And I didn't see it in that clip, but I was trying to think of an example from a client that I've heard. It's not one of mine.
This is my opinion, but if it really stresses him out to go to places like Walmart, she shouldn't take him, or they should shop at a smaller store. I mean, you should reduce your stress-inducing situations, it seems.
Sure. And, I don't know if he always goes to Walmart. It could have just been for the film. I don't know.
But, in general, would that be a good tactic?
Well, it kind of starts floating in with the avoidance stuff, right? And the more isolation, the more they think, oh, I'm fucked up, something's wrong with me. I can't even go to Walmart. I can't even go to the grocery store to get myself food. So it starts to feed into the PTSD issue.
And he wants...
Oh, Judy was next. Sorry, Bob.
I
just want to add, several wives that I've talked to, or girlfriends, they feel that they've lost so much already by missing them when they were gone and worrying about them when they were gone, and then not having their life be normal, that they really cling to. I want to go to Walmart. I just want to go to Walmart, and I want you to come with me. And we hear that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that he probably wants to try and be normal.
Sure.
And that's going to Walmart and then putting up with it. From that side.
Being from that side, yeah.
When I first saw that, I was thinking the same thing, like, why is she pushing him to go to Walmart? But then I thought, it's been a long time, and maybe it was her attempt to try to re-socialize him, so that there wasn't the avoidance.
You take it for granted, right? The family going to the grocery store to get food, and what a big deal it is for a military family. And I'm thinking about the weight of that little girl growing up, knowing that has a role, even though it's helpful to him, right? She has a role to make Dad feel safe, so that some part of her childhood gets impacted, and the weight that she has to hold for him. Yeah.
What was it that the young boy said when he was sitting on the counter? He had to sit on his knees?
It sucks.
And he knows it sucks.
And Dad knows it sucks.
Okay.
So, we've been talking about this, the avoidance. Those are the two things that you really see with secondary, the ripple effect of trauma. You really see the avoidance, and you really see the hyperarousal. I think an idea an example just came to mind. Somebody who went to movie theaters with the person or to a concert with a vet, and the vet is so hypervigilant because there's too much to manage, you know, with that many people at a concert, that their hypervigilance is like off the scale. And often at veterans talks, veterans will put themselves by the exit, depending on their level of recovery from PTSD. So it's like they're constantly looking for the exit routes and the easiest way to negotiate if a problem comes up, like how to handle it. And so that transfers into the relationship with their partner, and so the partner becomes aware of, oh, I can't go to a fireworks, you know, show with my husband because he's gonna freak out if we go to Folsom Field. He can't hang in that environment. So they start to avoid, right? They start to avoid activities. They don't go to the movies anymore. They don't go to concerts. They don't go to fireworks displays.
Does it help if they are employed or not?
If the vet is or the spouse.
The
Either
vet,
one.
but both, I guess.
Well, sure, yeah, certainly, because, and I was at the Denver Vet Center last summer, there was this influx of Vietnam-era vets who came in, who were, because they're at retirement age, who have had no therapy, and they've put all their distraction and energy into their work.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's this huge gap, and their trauma is surfacing. So I think work does serve, you know, it can serve to distract from the
But
symptoms.
it's still there, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So factors of secondary trauma. So this is just kind of a broad outline of what the points I'm going to hit during this talk. So it's societal legacy. So where you come from, like, you know, your heritage, you know, your German background, your French background, English background, whatever, how that plays a role. And how that translates into, you know, developing your family dynamic around how you talk about grief and trauma. So the emotional demands of the deployment and parenting, military stigma towards mental health, a huge factor, and drugs and alcohol. So the historical perspective. So there's this romantic notion from World War II that going off to war because it was quote unquote, you know, the good war, is this romantic thing. I think somebody told me back when you, Judy, that a lot of the music that came, or a lot of the Christmas music that we sing today came out of the war era. So there's this romanticism around war and sacrifice, and the family sacrificing and the soldier sacrificing, and there's a nobility to it. So and the suck it up buttercup kind of mentality is valued over just actually having the experience that's visible of grief and worrying. And so the association is, right, worrying for fear is equated with weakness, and stoicism is equated with strength. And the military stigma, as we'll get to, you know, drills this in too. But the family, you get the military stigma towards mental health or needing support is stigmatized, but it trickles down to the family. You know, I've talked to a couple spouses that have officers for husbands, and there's a whole protocol that they get around things they can say and do in social class that they can associate with and not. And it's just, it's so prescribed. So the family is reflective of that, you know, the military. And the military has an expectation that you suck it up. So the question is, how do we redefine strength so that all parts of ourselves are represented, so that the grief is represented, so that the fear is represented, so that the worry is represented? How do we redefine strength so that it incorporates those things? Because I can tell you what, it takes a hell of a lot more strength to sit in your own skin and have that experience than it does to suck it up. I'm not saying sucking it up isn't hard, it is. And it takes a hell of a lot more strength to display it. So the hard lessons to learn, right? So this is the impact in terms of the children. So this is kind of some nasty statistics. These are kind of some nasty studies that are out there. The studies themselves are fine, but the results are kind of hard to read. So these are children, right? And spouses. Yeah, these are the, I'm sorry, these are just the, we're just talking about spouses right now. this was a study that they did on Army riots. So you can see after the first deployment, right, what happens, depressive disorders is the number one, usually identified mental health problem for the spouse. And then sleep disorders, anxiety. And then you can see how much it jumps at the second deployment. So how much more suffering. And these guys, I kept looking for an average number of deployments for our current war, and I couldn't find one, but most people, it is, I don't know what the number is, but majority of our enlisted active duty folks are at least seeing 2 to 3 deployments. So, I mean, you're gonna start seeing the bottom half be much more representative in our military families and then in our culture. So the impact on children, this is the study that there was that moment of debate for me of including this because it's hard to read stuff like this. It's hard to see the implications of a deployed parent and then essentially a single parent and what is left for the kids. And this was one of the friendlier statistics. There was a couple of studies that were done in 2007 that the Pentagon financed. Physical and sexual abuse is actually pretty prevalent, particularly after the soldier comes back that is suffering with PTSD. It's really high. It's, I think, around 71%.
Wow.
According to one study. According to one study. So the shot that these little beings have is pretty shitty in most cases. Not all. There are some healthy military families out there. I don't mean to depict them all this way. Statistically, the odds are, against